Hi there. Welcome to another TeamSense Tuesday webinar. My name is Caroline Rizzo, and I am so excited to have Kirk and Jennifer joining us today. We'll talk a lot more about modernizing attendance tracking and really get Jen's perspective on her work that she's done within her organization. Before we jump in, though, let's cover a few housekeeping items. So, as always, we love it when you ask questions. We welcome you to place your questions in the Q&A panel that's located at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to ask them throughout the webinar, but we will get to the Q&A section at the end, and I'll be jumping back in to help Kirk with this. And then also, you may have noticed we are recording this webinar. So if you have to hop early or if you want to revisit the content at a later date, no problem. We'll be emailing out a YouTube link for you as well. Of course, you can always go to teamsense.com/webinars to take a look at any of our past content, or you can see what's upcoming for future Tuesdays. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce Kirk and Jennifer. So Kirk, feel free to introduce yourself. Welcome.
Thanks, Caroline. Hi, everyone. My name is Kirk Wei, and I am a customer success manager here at TeamSense.
Hey everyone, my name is Jennifer Montes and I'm an HR professional.
Awesome. Well, we're so glad to have y'all. I know it's going to be a really great conversation. So I will be going off camera here in the background to let y'all chit chat. But again, I'll hop back in for our Q&A section and welcome everybody that's joined us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Hi, everyone. Hey, Jen. How's it going?
Good, how about you?
Fantastic, fantastic. I felt like having an extra day of Memorial Day was just wonderful to kind of get the week started. And so I'm feeling energized. How are you feeling?
Same, I'm feeling excited and relaxed and got the rest I needed.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Yeah, and I know like life right now, there's a lot of like transitions and stuff. So I'm glad that like things are moving towards where you want to go. And I'm really excited for, people to get to know you more today because I've had the pleasure, just for folks on the call, to just give you context. I've had the pleasure to work with Jen this past 6 months. And she has just been a fantastic partner, a fantastic friend, but also just a wonderful person to get to know. And she has a plethora of like experiences going from like working in the finance industry all the way to the HR industry and being where she is today. That was honestly one of the reasons, Jen, I thought you would be a great candidate. And so would you, share a little bit of that background with everyone?
Yes, so I actually started my career in manufacturing on the floor, and I knew that a lot of the folks didn't have the opportunity to have it was a representative that knew their language, so it inspired me to, get a career. So I started that, transitioned to a nursing facility. I did nurses aid for 5 years while going to school, being a full-time mom and going to full-time school at nighttime. Transitioned to the banking industry. I was a frontline manager for a credit union for 7 years. Once I finished my degree, I decided to go into human resources as a coordinator. I ended up filling in for the generalist payroll, and I noticed that the need for the bilingual representative. So I continued and going to school and got my degree. Transitioned bachelor's degree, transitioned into a recruiting agency, just because where I was, there was no more room for growth and I needed to grow. There was no advancement. So I was given the opportunity to start up a recruiting agency for Western New York called Parallel at the time. We opened up in Westfield. I was the manager. My job was to grow it and get clients. Within a year, I grew enough that I was able to hire an assistant. They asked me to expand to Erie, Pennsylvania, opened another branch for them there, expanded it. And then they asked me to kind of open a smaller branch in Dunkirk to get more applicants. And by the time I was there, it was like 2.5 years. We had 3 locations, which I managed.
Wow.
Then I was given the opportunity to actually settle down because I was going all over the place at the time, to just stay one place and help out. So I got hired on by Matco as their HR generalist, and I oversaw 150 plus people, which was a pleasure, and I love doing that because I opened a door to bilingual folks that generally didn't have the opportunity at the time because they didn't have anybody to communicate with.
I love that. And wow. Honestly, like I knew all that just going into this call, but just hearing all of that again, it is incredible to kind of hear and see the journey you've gone through. Not only just the plethora again of the experiences and industries you've been into, starting also new sites for other businesses, being a rock star, but
Mhm.
also being a mom, right? Like being a mom throughout all of that, going through school, taking care of your family,
Yeah.
and then also being able to do a stellar job at your work, right? And I've seen those things happen when we were working together, when you brought TeamSense on to, Matco, and we were working on implementing TeamSense. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a person that I've had the pleasure to work with. And I'm curious, like, going into the bilingual side of things, right? I think that was a really big factor for you and deciding on how you wanted to approach working with different vendors and bringing like in TeamSense on. I'm curious, like when you were thinking about bringing on like a time and attendance product, was that one of the reasons why you chose TeamSense, or how did that kind of come into the equation for you?
Yeah, so TeamSense was recommended actually by our former plant manager. His name was Ben. I guess one of our opcos uses TeamSense and they loved it. So he wanted me to look into it. While I was doing the research and writing the proposal for the company, I noticed that TeamSense offered the call off line and texting in Spanish, which is a big plus for us because we have many employees that it's easier for them to communicate in Spanish. So that made it easier for us to choose TeamSense.
I love that. I think and I remember you sharing that with me in the very beginning too. And so we were very intentional on making that happen. And I even remember when we were creating like promotions for like, launching TeamSense, we not only made English versions of the posters, but also Spanish versions, right? And you also really took the time to make sure, was the wording correct? How did we, share that with your hourly workers and workforce? Because ultimately it's to benefit them, right?
Yes.
So how was that process for you, like implementing and onboarding?
It was really easy. We had some employees test it first before we made a decision.
Mhm.
So we chose a few from each shift, some that only spoke English and some who were bilingual to see how the ease of the application would be before we decided to go on to TeamSense. The transition was very easy. You guys had a date. We worked through it. There were some hiccups at the beginning, but we worked through it out and it was amazing. Getting the team used to it was a little different because for years they're using a different call up line, which was difficult to track because it didn't have caller ID. Sometimes we couldn't understand what the message said or their name, and sometimes the time wasn't stamped correctly, and those things were important for us. So the transition was amazing.
I love that. And to that point, right? I just want to remind folks on the call, you manage 150 plus like employees. And so to manage all of that with your prior process, right? I can't imagine how tedious and time consuming and, just all the things that you had to handle for yourself. Has TeamSense since onboarding, has that solved some of those major pain points for you?
Yes, because before with the order call off, the cell leaders didn't know when one of the team members was not coming in. With TeamSense now that it shows their name, the reason they're calling off, so they know in advance when coming in that they're missing a team player, so they have to reorganize and so they can run production smoothly. So this has helped plan better.
Yeah, okay. So to that point, then you've also not only like net positively benefited from using TeamSense, seems like your partners on the field too, like on site, the plant managers, supervisors, they've also benefited from, having more transparency, right?
Yes, they love it. And you can run reports and we can plan ahead because we know what days we have the most call-offs and the reason why. So it helps us a lot.
I love that. And one of the things I really really enjoy about TeamSense is not just only when we implement TeamSense and we start to get your time and attendance streamlined the process more streamlined, but it's really also post implementation. Once TeamSense goes live, we have so many other features that your plan comes with. And so I remember there were, different moments of using our other products for different features of, different events you had. I'm curious, the one I'm thinking about, I want to share, but I want to see like from you, was there a moment when you were really grateful to like use TeamSense and felt like that was the really memorable moment for you?
Yeah, there's actually two. One was a blood drive, so we got to promote it more.
Yeah.
We I'm big on the blood drives because it saves lives. So we do it twice a year, and being able to just promote it so that people knew about it. We even had outsiders come in and donate blood, which was the first ever. So it helped get the message out there. And the second was when we unfortunately had to do a shutdown for second shift due to shortage of materials.
Mhm.
We could just go ahead and use the communicate part of it and only text the individuals that we needed to communicate, hey, don't show up. And we have
Mm.
actually had to cancel production. The former way, we had to call every individual. This was just one message, one text, letting them know, unfortunately, we have to cancel tonight, but tomorrow the normal production hours will continue. So it saved tons of money and time, and trust me, the manager said this has paid for itself basically because we were able to communicate quickly.
That's exactly it. I think the thing about TeamSense is sometimes initially, customers may not know how much benefit they get from using TeamSense until they look back at like, oh my gosh, the amount of time you had to call. I can't imagine calling 150 employees. Let's just start with that. So that plus the fact that like it probably takes you like at least 2 minutes, 3 minutes just like get a hold of them. And I think that was the thing that, was always a big kind of a subject for y'all because it was always making sure the accountability is there, right? And I also will say I love the fact that you brought up the blood drive because that was what I was thinking about, and it was super memorable for me because I think that was the first time I got to work with a client of mine, such as yourself, where we got to do something that was also very personal to you, right?
Yes. So yes, the reason I do blood drives every year is because my father, who is no longer with us, but at the time he needed blood, and unfortunately the hospital that he was admitted to did not have the blood to help him, so he had to be shipped out to a different location. So there is when I realized the importance of donating blood to save lives.
That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Jen. And um, I'm glad that TeamSense was able to be a part of that. That was something that you were able to just achieve and be able to kind of get that promoted to the folks that you work with. But also like it was such a net positive thing for society, right? And I think that's one of the things that I always tell people is yes, you get to like get your time and attendance streamlined and all that, but really TeamSense can be so much more than that if you put in the time to get more creative. And it's supposed to be very easy to use. I'm curious, like when you started to get used to TeamSense, I felt like our cadence of our meetings slowly tapered because you just felt super like empowered to use it on your own, right?
Right. But there's still a lot of things that can be done, like
Mhm.
forms, to better communicate with HR, because unfortunately we're not on the floor all the time. And the
Mhm.
fact that there's different forms that can be created for the employee to simply text and let HR know what they need without having to chase HR down, right? Because we're always tied up in meetings or some other stuff, and it's kind of difficult to always be on the floor and be there for the employee 100%. So the fact that you guys are make it easy to create forms for us to better communicate and give them the things that they need, it's amazing.
That's exactly it. And I think to that point, right? I think today's webinar is called Modernizing the Workforce, right? And digitizing how HR can be streamlined and more optimized. Now that you've been in the field of like going from like the multiple different industries you've been in before and the different positions you've been in before, and now, being also in like HR and being a rock star in it. I'm curious, just from your personal experience, has there been a need to modernize some of those like industries that you've been in and the kinds of like work you've been in because it just seems too manual from a process standpoint.
Yes, unfortunately, a lot of companies are still outdated. TeamSense makes it easier to communicate, to plan. to have a better engagement. For example, we use TeamSense a lot for, especially when we have picnics, lunches.
Mm,
We're able to communicate ahead, because before we put the list by the time clocks, and realistically, a lot of the employees were not reading, not signing up. But now we can let them know ahead of time, hey, say the date, this is what event is going on, and get better participation. Uh,
mhm,
so a lot of the other companies fail with, having the participation and engagement, because they're not communicating properly. And TeamSense allows us to communicate in a timely manner, and
mhm.
thus process, make the engagement better. And not only can you communicate in English, but in Spanish. And I'm assuming you guys are working in different languages. So
Yeah.
that helps to be able to communicate with employees you normally can't.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And right now, if I remember correctly, I think we have 20 plus different languages we
That's
offer
amazing.
with
That's
Sense.
amazing.
Yeah. And as an immigrant too, like coming here, I've seen it firsthand as well, where language barriers are some of the biggest things that, creates a lot of hurdles for people, right? I think one thing is, transitioning to a new process and change management. Another thing is to ask someone who's been, in their field for so long, working hard every single day, but then, be still very unfamiliar with maybe a language, to then now be given some of that, that burden kind of eased off of them, where they can still kind of use their language of preference, right?
Right.
I'm curious, have you talked to folks from your workforce who, were able to utilize that Spanish language part of our TeamSense forms to their benefit?
Yes, they love it because they can text off in Spanish
Mhm, mhm.
and write the reason. And the leaders will know why they called off. So they love that feature, because they have a lot of times they have difficulty communicating with their leaders, trying to express the reason of their call off, the reason they need off.
Mm.
It's just made it easier for them.
I love that. I'm curious too, because you're sometimes on the ground, and you've had to work with folks who speak Spanish in different kinds of industries even before working in your current role. Um, what has been some of the biggest barriers and some of the biggest pain points for, folks who don't have English as their first language, that, would be a net benefit for them if they had something like TeamSense, or if there was a product that is more catered to multiple languages.
Communication is the biggest one. Uh,
Hmm.
there's not that many bilingual leaders out there. I wish there was more. So it makes it a little difficult for the leaders to communicate with the floor, and the employees to communicate vice versa. So with TeamSense, you're able to write, the notices in Spanish and in English. You're able to impact those that normally wouldn't, or communicate with those that you normally wouldn't. Or it's because I always get questions, what does that mean when
Yeah.
they're posting up in English? So being able to do it in both languages is amazing. It saved a lot of time. It's actually changed the morale on the floor. So I appreciate it.
Oh man, that is beautiful to hear. Because I think the part of it is that morality, right? I think that morale is something that really keeps people feel engaged, and I think it must have been so relieving to them that they have a person such as yourself representing them and considering their needs. Not just for sometimes the mass majority, but also for the folks who may be impacted and want to kind of get that net positive benefit that hasn't been considered before. And so I'm curious, like with working with multiple vendors and having had a chance to work with a lot of different products throughout your career, is there anything that distinguishes like working with TeamSense or from other vendors?
Uh, Absolutely. Yeah, you guys are amazing. You respond quickly if there's any issues. The
Mm,
fact that you meet by willing to talk to us bi-weekly and go over ideas and listen and just be there readily available is amazing. Not many vendors can say, I'm available for you every other week.
yeah.
You guys are make time to make sure you're available answering the questions. You stand out for sure.
that. And I want to also just give a quick shout out to our fantastic support engineers, Josh Moon and Jessica Ribbons. They are fantastic. I mean, Judd
Yeah,
knows. I don't
yeah,
need to say anything around that.
absolutely amazing. They're great at troubleshooting and getting down to the problem immediately. So kudos
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, we couldn't do what we can without them, and we appreciate, just you sharing that as well. And I think part of the process of being more close to our clients and just, giving them that regular cadence is, really what we want to establish here. Like, we have a great product.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. But, we've worked with multiple vendors before, and we understand why, like, sometimes when you don't get that face to face as often, you don't hear a response until like a month later or two. How frustrating that can be. And, in a world where things are moving so fast, especially in manufacturing, where it's sometimes 24/7, changes have to be made fast and quick. And so I'm glad that, TeamSense was able to be a partner to you and kind of help you out in those situations.
Yeah, I recommend it to everyone.
Thank you, thank you. So I think the one last question I wanted to ask you before we move on to just getting to know you a little bit more is it sounds like you had a positive experience implementing TeamSense, and that you would recommend TeamSense as you're transitioning into future opportunities potentially. I'm curious, would you consider still using TeamSense and in different industries and different formats?
Yes, absolutely. I know you guys are looking into making it better. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So if I come into a role where TeamSense could be implemented, absolutely, I would highly recommend.
that's great. That's great. And we always appreciate that. I think um it's really nice to know that people enjoy the product that we build, but I think to hear from our customers of other customers referring us, that's a special moment, and it really just brings a smile to my face. And honestly, it really encourages me to get up every day to serve. And I think Jen, you're a fantastic partner, and I appreciate you. Jen, if folks want to like reach out to you more and get to know you a bit more, are you cool with them like connecting with you on LinkedIn and so on?
Absolutely, absolutely. Feel
Beautiful.
free.
Beautiful. And before we go into, Q&A, Jen, I just want to kind of give you the floor to see if there's anything else you wanted to share with folks about not just even TeamSense, but just about like, your work experience. What maybe is a lesson you would give to the next generation, or even someone that was in your shoes, like, when they just started out in their career.
Yes. So nothing's easy at first. Don't give up, keep going. The promise don't last forever. The rainbow does come out, I promise. The storm does end.
Yes, this too shall pass. Yeah,
Yeah.
love that. Jen, I've had the pleasure to work with you, and I continue to look forward to that. And I'm excited for where you're going to be going. And I know people have really benefited from not only hearing about your story, but also getting to, connect with you. And yeah, again, I know that this opportunity is going to be super exciting. So thank you, Jen.
Appreciate your partnership for real. You guys been amazing.
Yeah, of course. I love that. Caroline, let's bring up the Q&A and let's see what kind of questions we got.
Yeah, I'm back. I feel like the webinar ghost that comes in and out.
I know.
I've been here the whole time. I'm kidding. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about our Q&A section. First, I want to share a bit more about our webinar for next week. So as always, we love bringing in guests to come and talk with us about their experience using TeamSense. Really excited next week to have Brittany Passer, who's an HR director from Western Sugar, joining us. She has been participating in some interesting testing with some new product features that we have around points. So if you are considering a points attendance policy, if you are kind of in between thinking about implementing it, not implementing it, we have some really great examples of people that have successfully implemented it. And so we're really excited to hear more about Brittany's story next week. So feel free to join us. Of course, I will also mention Q&A. We're about to hop into it, but if you ever want to get in touch with us, learn more about TeamSense, easy to do. Really recommend taking a look at a demo of TeamSense. Obviously, we've been talking about all these different things like Communicate and Portal and all these fun things. If you're curious to learn more what that actually means and what it is in our product, a demo is a great way to do it. Of course, you can always join us every week here on Tuesdays. We love new faces. We love seeing our customers. So please join us next week and feel free to register. Okay, let's hop into some Q&A here. So we did have a few questions that came in, and if anybody in the audience does have other questions, feel free to just pop them in there. We do have some time. So this one that came through right now, this may be a good question for Kirk. We talked about the different languages that TeamSense supports. What are some of those examples of languages other than Spanish? How many languages in total do we really support? That was a question that came in.
Yeah, it's a great question. I will say I don't know all 20 questions languages that we have, but I do know we do have more than 20 different languages folks can choose from. What I will say is we did have a client in the past few months who was net new to TeamSense as well, and I think this is really what distinguishes TeamSense to honestly some of the vendors we have, but also really to me when I was deciding to join TeamSense is the fact that we really put customer care first, right? And so they were asking, do you have Ukrainian? You have Uruguayan, and I think those two languages were net new that we did not have in our repository. And so, when we got those feedback, we had to definitely put in the work to kind of make sure that we translate those languages really well. It was Ukrainian and Kinyarwanda that we were trying to figure out how to add those in. Ultimately, we were able to get those new languages imported in and provide that to our customer, and they were able to use that for their workforce because they have more folks who only uses those languages. So yeah, those are two net new on top of like the 20 that we had.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think back to some examples we've had of people talking about the fact, and you've probably had this experience as well, Jen, where if you have a call off system where people are calling in and they can't speak in the language of their supervisor or HR manager, there can be a lot lost in translation. And maybe they are calling in to say, hey, I'm sick. And that may turn into a no call, no show because there was just no transparent communication. So I think having that accuracy and then also, again, empowering your employees to feel like, hey, this company cares about me. They are willing to meet me in the language that I speak. I'm sure it really helps a lot with retention too. Um, I don't know if you have any points around that, Jen, in terms of your experience with just feeling like you have a better retention with engaging with those employees.
Yes, because you have the option to write their messages in Spanish. So it makes it easier to communicate in their own language. And it makes it easier for the leaders to know why the employee called off. Because before, when they were calling off, they were saying their message in Spanish. And unless there was someone to actually translate that message correctly, they weren't getting the full reason why.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like I have a new friend to practice my Spanish with, so
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Okay, we had another question that came in. This is interesting. Around can TeamSense be used to help employees self-serve? So like accessing documents or points or policies. Is there a way that they can do that through TeamSense?
Yeah. So I mean, Jen, I would love for you to see if you can share an actual experience that you had. But of course, we definitely have this feature called Portal that Jen knows really, really well. And what it is essentially a intranet of sort where you are able to add documents that are linked to other repositories. And it just makes it so much more simple for employees to find resources that does not require them to have to reach out to Jen. Then Jen has to find the time to like go and find the document for that individual. All you have to do is, text TeamSense to your TeamSense phone number. It brings you to the portal link. You open it up. It's a very clean UI. You hit the link that you're looking for, and you get to the resource. But Jen, I'm curious, has that been able to be a benefit for you?
It has, especially when we did the blood drive. But there's also ways that, like, especially if they're leaving on a leave of absence, that you can put all their, because there's a lot of questions, right? When it comes to paternity, maternity leave, or short-term disability, long-term disability, you can add all those to the portal, and it makes it easier for who do I call, how do I start the process. Yeah, so there's a lot of ways you can upload those policies and more than that into the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Probably saves you so much time because then in case you have people that come and ask you questions about this policy or that policy, you can just say, hey, just, text this number or text this word and you can go to portal right away. So it's a lot more self-serving. You don't have to answer a million questions of the same question. Cool. Okay, last question that came through because we are running up on our time here together. Do you use TeamSense to collect feedback from your employees? I'm curious if you've ever used it for that purpose.
I
Mm,
haven't used
yeah.
it, but I know that you guys can do surveys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely that's actually a really, really great question. And Jen can attest to this for sure. I think we've not only built out an absence survey for her, but we've also explored other forms with you before that's customized to your own need. But specific to feedbacks, yeah, 100%. We've had folks who created, engagement surveys, pulse surveys, onboarding surveys that really gives the HR team or even the plant managers the opportunity to get more insights around a specific event, a specific gauge on like their workforce, how they're feeling. A lot of times when it's also going through like a net new process of onboarding someone, they also want to get feedback on how that experience was for them, because if they can improve their onboarding experience, that's a great way to get that signal.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
That's great. Yeah, it seems like it's super simple, easy to use, connect, because I think that's the hardest bit is establishing that connection when you say, I can't be on the floor all the time, and you can put something on a clipboard, but people may not see it or ignore it. So how do you like actually collect that feedback in a way that's really easy and accessible? So that's great to hear. Okay, it looks like we are at our time with questions. Of course, thank you, Jen, for your willingness also to connect with anybody on LinkedIn as well. We may have to just start building out our own little community of manufacturing HR managers so y'all can talk there.
Sneak peek.
But we really appreciate your time, Jen, and we are so grateful to have you as a customer. It's been so wonderful. And Kirk, thank you as always for your time, and your genuine connection with our with our customers is really inspiring. So really love hanging out with you and having these conversations. But thanks to both of y'all. Thank you to everybody that joined us today. Of course, you can always join us every Tuesday. We have these weekly, and looking forward to bringing in more voices from HR and manufacturing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caroline. And thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, everybody have a great Tuesday. Take care.